So we have Sam Lucas, who's joining us today. Sam's creative practice revolves around the relationship of the self and the world through the lens of the body by creating ambiguous figurative forms. She encourages the viewer to be curious and question their relationship to their body and how others may be different from them or the same. I had the really lovely opportunity to work with Sam as an award artist in BCB 2019, not that long ago. And it's really wonderful to be able to spend time with Sam and to see and hear her in conversation with Dena Bagi. Dena is a lecturer and a practice-based researcher in the arts sector. Her arts research practice involves working closely with community members and artists to curate clay workshops, projects, and learning play spaces. She believes passionately that working with clay has a profound effect on healing and health in general. Also, Dena has been a wonderful former colleague of mine. She used to work with BCB. She led our community engagement and education, and then really opened up the health programme as part of British Ceramics Biennial. And she is currently doing her PhD at Sunderland University. So without further ado, I will share my screen. And oh, thanks, Nikki. You've just seen your message there. I will share my screen and play the video. Let me see. Okay, share. And I'll hit play. So enjoy.
Welcome to the Clay Bodies talk. I am Dena Bagi and I'm a PhD student studying the intersection or the relationship between clay, wellbeing and gallery-based education.
I'm Sam Lucas, I am a ceramicist.
So what we aimed to do today was to move along a line or a continuum of activities that would allow us to explore how clay might enable us to understand or represent ourselves as humans. We covered things like clay's ability to connect us with our mind body or help us be very perceptive. We talked a lot about reciprocity, what you give it, you get back. We talked about starting again and again with clay, and we finished off with a discussion about how this all relates to a contemporary kind of bodily expectation that we and other people have about ourselves. And we hope you enjoy it.
I'm just going to take a small boil of clay and just roll it in my hands. Just squeeze it and it's like a little clam.
Mine's not neat.
I find it takes a while to judge how much clay, and it gets thinner as you go along. The first ones are always a bit like most things. The first one, like sketching, whatever, the first one's a bit rough. I'm going a bit fast as well.
Just copy. So as you take on, it takes on loads of the shapes of your hand, doesn't it? So the first shape it takes on is a response to the shape of your palm, I suppose, like that.
Yeah, so it kind of, depending on the size of your hands, it kind of takes a while to...
Why does mine go like that and yours goes...
Just about pressure that you're putting on, or... It's all those little considerations, isn't it? The size, the pressure, it starts to warm up from being cold.
And crack.
Yeah, crack. That's the clay as well. The different clay reacts differently.
Would you normally just start playing with a ball of clay? That's a really normal thing for you to do.
Yeah, just get something and to start not even thinking about what I'm making particularly. Sometimes I might have a thought in my head from something that I've made before.
Mm-hmm.
but it would be small and not challenging, and I wouldn't even use water, so things might just fall apart, but it's just that beginning.
And you just do you have to consciously let that happen? I suppose you don't.
To start with,
you're like, right, I've got to just sit with a ball of clay now, and I've just got to make things, and something will grow. That's quite cool, isn't it?
if I was sat on my own, I would probably, I would say words maybe, because I do talk to myself sometimes, but it's a non-verbal experience. So it does, you do regress back to that pre-verbal experience of just being with your body and the material, which is, as I said, it's very malleable, and it's like your body, so it mirrors whatever you do to it. It holds that pressure or
and that memory.
Memory, that's it. Yeah. So these kind of exercises that when I finished doing the MA and started at Fireworks Clay Studios,
which is in Cardiff, right?
Yeah. So I probably felt a little bit overwhelmed being with all these professional ceramicists, and I was sort of, even though I'm a bit older, starting out this journey. So I would feel like there's pressure to then create something in my space. So it was a way of attuning myself to the clay. So then, I would probably then start putting things together a bit.
So you'd sit down and do what we'd just done to acclimatise yourself to the space. Regress again though, right?
Yeah. It's all about, I think, moving backwards and forwards, isn't it, I suppose?
So you didn't want to go into a space with lots of hot shots and kind of, is that even a word, hot shot? Like people that you admired and had a solid surround practice and make something. Did you feel like you needed to sit down and kind of go back to something that only you could understand, or?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Because, you're walking into a space where they've all got quite refined practice, and they're all making and selling professionally, and I've just stepped out of university. Two things. That's part of my process as a person. It doesn't matter what I do, I always go back.
Okay.
I don't know whether it's to do with, my personality and the sort of personality that I've got, but I don't sort of, I don't know, I don't sort of move up. I kind of go up, down, up. Or maybe it's like that. I constantly come back.
And you always start again.
Yeah.
Which is what the material's doing, right? So I've just...
Yeah.
I was copying something that you did over there, so I was joining it together. But then I'm kind of quite interested in what you're doing, which you're opening the shape up, aren't you? And then joining it like... almost like it's like dome-like. Or cell-like, isn't it?
Yeah, cell-like. I think that's quite a good...
But I don't want to make a political...
There's no hierarchy.
There's no hierarchy. It's not kind of you're not on like this endeavour to get more... Be kind of better in any kind of commercial way. It's more that you want to kind of keep moving back and starting again in a way that's connected to your mind and your body, and which again is quite kind of clever and grown up and like very, yeah.
Well, actually, I think you probably hit the nail on the head to do with growing up. I think this is a funny one, the idea of growing up. But so what I tend to do is I make little components and I leave them to dry and I fire them, and then I come back to them and then I put them together later on. I sort of play with them, like I kind of choreograph them and see what sort of dialogues they have with each other. But also, I probably, for all of, I was saying before about not making representations, there will be things in my mind. I will be thinking about emotions and feelings, and quite often recently I've been thinking a lot about hidden and exposure, as a person. We were talking about emotions before, and how so quite often I try to explore the feelings of my object or my representation of the body isn't necessarily a physical, literal representation of the body. It's an abstract representation of the feeling of being in the body.
Okay.
So these to me would then might feel like they're sort of, like you were saying about cells. So they could be internal structures externally, or they could be bodily forms that feel exposed or feel... There was a form that I kept on repeating, and I called it puffer, and it almost had like this sort of structure, but it felt a bit like a paradox or a contradiction, because it felt like there were sort of bodily parts that were on the outside, but at the same time it felt like it was like a big puffer jacket, so it was also concealing what was inside. So it was that.
And the clay responds to your body, it takes on the forms of your body, you're only using your body to manipulate it. How then do you get from that to making a form?
A big
which
form.
Is but also the form means more than that. The form has, from what you're saying about that puffer jacket form, that has really complicated messages about you perhaps, or everyone, all of us. So kind of it just kind of organically happens, does it? You build something, you end up making something quite kind of bodily, cell-like, and then that builds. And I suppose I'm getting ahead of ourselves, aren't I? Because that's what we're going to do now.
I think what happens is that you have this process, you make these forms, and then a penny drops.
Okay.
You sort of think, we are. I guess we are. Then, so that you're moving from the intuitive. Perhaps at this point, then I will make. So I'll have a series of objects, and they'll be different. So I'll have these kind of cellular forms, like you were saying, and maybe I'll have some more objects where they're more elongated, or maybe using a different part of the hand. So I might be rolling out clay and making these more stick-like.
So should we do that then? In fact, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, that's great. Some sort of ring forms, and I might add these forms onto those forms, so that it might build up that way. I think it is just making up like a language, making up a series of objects of different shapes and forms.
And just letting yourself go with it.
Yeah, I mean, I will do a series of one, a series of another, so that they'll, and it's kind of just what you sort of start doing it, and you think, I like that one, or I like that one, and then I'd move on to making these sort of longer forms, which they'll dry out during the process of making. These will sort of dry out a bit, and I'll use things to support things. So I might attach things to them, and they'll stand up.
So that's a bit kind of cagey, but that's probably because like your really iconic work at BCB that time, which was a kind of upside down green.
Well, that's the other thing, isn't it? I like making sort of cage forms, because I think again, if you're making these sort of visceral, exposed bodily forms, I quite like the juxtaposition with the these sort of hard metallic steel caged forms as well. They're sort of, again, going back to that kind of protection and...
Yeah, so I was about to say that actually it's quite exposing, isn't it, to be constantly thinking... Well, it's also quite exposing to be constantly in that mind-body state, isn't it? Like, to be in that state where you're transcending into what's deep within your brain in a subconscious way, that's quite an exposing place to sit, isn't it? So no wonder you start making cages, and because you like probably just want to protect yourself for a little while. The reciprocity of it. So
great word.
And everybody And each clay is completely different, right? So even every person is completely different.
Yeah.
And we're all completely different at different times of the day, at different points in our lives, at different points of the week, depending on lots of external and internal factors. So it's a real game of push and pull with the clay, isn't it?
Push and pull.
Push and pull. So we can only give so much at a certain time, and it only gives us so much back. And it's a real relationship, and every body of clay is different, right? And that reciprocal relationship is quite unique, isn't it?
Yeah, and also transferable. It's something you're kind of almost practicing for real life situations as well, aren't you? It's like, so you're having that conversation with the clay, but you're also having that conversation outside again. So in a way, it's kind of like a reflective period where you may not even, these thoughts are going to be passing through your mind whilst you're doing it, because you're allowing it to flow,
And it's practice, isn't it? That word practice means so much. You're practicing your practice, clay practice. You're practicing having a relationship. You're practicing how far you're pushing yourself. You're practicing your boundaries. You're practicing all these things.
So
we've moved on.
So we've started again. We've got the objects that we created already, and we're starting some new ones as well.
Yeah, and we've just been talking before we pressed record about starting again. So it feels like every board we've moved on to today, we've almost started again. So we started with the bag of clay, and then we started with the forms and we built them. And now we're starting again with the forms to build something. So that's the process in which you kind of loosely follow, isn't it, when you work? So what we're doing now, we're constructing something, right? That's what you would ordinarily do. And you've bought some dry props for us to use, right?
Yes, I've got some. Well, I always think of the three graces. They're three figures.
Okay. And
one's giving, one's receiving it, and then giving back. So it's like in a constant flux.
Cycle.
That's
like clay, right? Comes from the earth. Do you want me to do this?
Yeah, do that.
It comes from the earth, it gets used, it goes back. Like us, we're just compost, right?
Absolutely.
That's not going to work, is it?
We'll find a way. We'll leave that there. We'll move over it.
Or is it not?
I suppose this is the bit where I'm then looking out, because all the other stages I'm looking in to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
It's just me and the material in my space, playing, exploring, and then this is the bit where you've got like a dialogue, you've got a language. Because
all of a sudden you've got a viewer, or not?
Maybe then I'm thinking, now what do I do? How do I? So I've got the components. How do these components together then say what it is I'm thinking? So it's making the intangible tangible, I guess. I think what I do now is, and this is really, if it makes me laugh, which is or it makes me recoil, or both of those two things. If I don't know, sometimes you just think, because obviously it's not for everybody, but for me, if I put these things together and I just think, I laugh, I think, because it's like, oh my God, that works for me. Yeah. That says what I'm trying. And again, it's not something, it's not like, I'm going to make and there it is. I think it's a gesture, isn't it? It's a feeling. That,
I like the word gesture.
It just helps. It helps to have everything around so that I can draw on things.
And this is drawing, right?
Yeah, this is scribbling.
This is scribbling. But I think that's just made me think of the recycled nature. For me, the recycled nature of your practice, the starting again and again and again in these cycles, and its relationship with clay as a body that can be recycled and reclaimed, and us as humans who can. So you before you were talking about this kind of, you don't see your life as a linear progression.
No, definitely not.
And absolutely not your practice, and you're taking yourself back again and again, and almost like the forms that you're making subvert the images that one may have in a modern world of what is beautiful or successful, or so it is quite a overt representation of a certain approach that you have to life, which is informed by clay, which is that we're just all humans and we're all just
malleable
and feeling our way, right? None of us really know what we're doing.
No, and because they're just little scribbles, aren't they? But so probably what I would have done is I would have fired the pieces, so obviously they'd be a lot more stable.
Yeah.
And then I can explore sort of balance and explore uncertainty as well by making things unstable. I want things to look a bit unstable. I want things to look a bit more. I mean, that probably will fall over in a minute. You know, so again, it's those talking about representation.
Yeah.
I attempt to represent feelings through, which a lot of people do, I guess, through the texture or the colour or the surface or the sense of balance.
Oh, wow. Sam, Dena, thank you so much. It was absolutely fascinating to listen in, to kind of be a fly on the wall in that conversation that you had whilst making. It's really amazing how clay acts as a medium for flow and buffer through conversation. I think it was something that Eva Masterman and Dena had mentioned the last time that they were with us, and I think Sam, you and I have talked about that before. Thank you so much for sharing. And if anybody has any questions, I know I have a question for Sam, but I'll hold it back to the very end. So if anything comes to anybody's mind through these next number of talks, please pop it in the chat, and we'll ask everybody at the end in the final 20 minutes or so. So we will move on to our next speaker. Next in our lovely lineup is Helen Beard. Helen Beard is potter and illustrator and people watcher at heart, as she says. She works from her London studio, where she makes, draws, designs, and sometimes teaches. Helen is joining us today to provide a unique insight into her process and how she works with others. And how she sustains creativity. Helen's Bone China collection has gradually developed over the last 10 years, and more so working in collaboration with Duchess China, 1888 in Stoke-on-Trent. And over the time, over the production process, things have been modified and the processes have been improved in her making. And whenever I was chatting with Helen about this, she talked about how much she learned through that process and the negotiation between manufacture and what you wanted to have as a handmade selection of work for your clients and for your audience. It's really wonderful to also have Helen here, because also she is an award exhibitor with BCB this year, 2021, and with her new body of work, her new installation called Ghost Town Britain. It's a charming but also really sensitive piece of work which reflects on the time that we experienced during lockdowns. And it sheds a light on some of the very different experiences that many of us will have had during that time. And so without further ado, I'll stop blabbering on and hand over to Helen. I will share my screen. I have your presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, but thank you so much for being here, Helen.
Great, thank you. So will you put up my slides now and I can just talk as we go along?
I will. I'll spotlight you and then I'll share my screen.
Okay, great. So I'm going to talk about my development from studio pottery to manufacture at Duchess China in Stoke-on-Trent. I've been working in clay for the last 20 years since I graduated from art college. But I think it's quite interesting to share this part of my work with you. It's been a very slow process to develop from my studio pottery to manufacture, and I think it's quite an interesting journey, because I think people who are in the early stages of their career, or graduates who are considering moving into ceramics as a profession, will identify with the challenges that I came up against along the way. And this is very much the functional side of my work. I will make the comparison to my BCB project towards the end of this talk, but for the moment I will focus on the challenges of turning my hand thrown pieces into a collection that can be sold around the world. So it's not very common to start out with an order book full, or a contract with a wholesaler in the US or Asia, where you would have the need to upscale your work dramatically. And, you know, it's very hard to upscale without finance. So for me, it was a very, very gradual progression, and the route is almost like stepping stones, with, you know, some large steps and then building, and then smaller steps, and building up the finance and contacts as I went along, growing my business and growing the brand. And it's only in the last 2.5 years that I've actually managed to delegate the entire process of making my functional ware pottery out to Duchess China, and then also to have the packaging created for me, and to be able to now ship all this collection around the world, and for it to be a brand in itself, separate from my artistic ceramics. And it's actually, in the process of delegating that whole process out, I've freed up my entire headspace and free time to then develop more personal projects, like the BCB, Ghost Town Britain. So next slide, please. This is my daily wear collection. They're made in bone china. I have been developing it for the last 10 years, and it's designed to be a collection that can be added to over time. So I would hope that customers buy 1 or 2 pieces and gradually build up their collection. It was very important to me that it would be a product that would last, a product that is sustainable, UK made, and a product that, you know, would be able to be used on a daily basis and bring some sort of joy into people's lives. So next slide, please. I'll just give you a little snapshot of the range. You can flick through these, Rhiannon. Yeah, thank you. Next, yeah. Okay, so this is the very beginning. After my degree, I moved to London and was fortunate to be introduced to Edmund de Waal, the potter and artist, and I did an apprenticeship with him for 18 months, and he taught me to throw in porcelain, and he trained me up really as a studio potter. it was a very exciting time to be working with him, because he was really at a pivotal point in his career where he was expanding his porcelain pots into installations which you found in museums, and bespoke pieces for interesting public houses. So I was very lucky to have that experience, because not only did it give me the chance to learn to throw, but he introduced me to how ambitious you can be with clay, and all the different areas that you can go into. I was quite lucky, because once I left him after 18 months, I moved into a studio next door. It was a very tight community of potters, Julian Stair, Karina Ciscato, Annie Turner, lots of fabulous makers, all within the same studio yard. And so I moved into a studio of my own, but surrounded by really supportive and fantastic potters. And I enjoyed success quite quickly with my porcelain pots. I was very lucky. I got into various craft fairs like Origin and Collect when it was at the V&A at the beginning. And it was straight away a really busy studio life that I was experiencing. Now, if we go down through these slides, you'll see this is throwing the pots on the wheel. I found that my process was very, very laborious. I was not only throwing the pots and trimming them, but I was spending a long time illustrating them. So I was using my own method of drawing onto clay. Here we go. If we pause here, you can see I would do a really lovely technique of line drawing using a carbon print. It was a technique I developed at Edinburgh College of Art. And I would make up sheets of my underglaze stain, like a black carbon paper, and hold it onto my porcelain pots and do line drawings, and then do washes of colour using underglaze stain. And the result was a really unique and lovely painterly kind of finished pot, but the process in itself was incredibly long-winded. So if we go down to the next slide, this is the glazing, next one here. These were my swimmers. I got into swimmers quite early on. It's a fascination with the human body, and I love the characters. I was introduced to a man in his 80s. He was a silversmith, and he was one of the outdoor swimmers at the Serpentine, and I just fell in love with the characters of these people, and loved drawing them because of their lovely pink limbs and bright red cheeks when they came out of the water. So it's this subject which became popular quite quickly, but each and every piece that I had to decorate was taking me a huge amount of time. The next one as well, you'll see, is another hand illustrated. Hopefully, I don't know how small this will be on your screens, but hopefully you can see the kind of very watercolor-esque finish of the illustration, and the line I've used using this carbon paper of underglaze stain is quite a sensitive and soft line, and something that I've always been very pleased with, and found it quite unique to my style. So although it was great to have the success and popularity and people asking for more and more of these designs, I found myself working 12, 14 hours a day and just a factory on my own. I got myself an assistant, and together we would try and, you know, meet the demand. But at the end of the day, it was too a laborious process to do on a functional pot, which could be, you know, realistically used every day, because, you know, these were really becoming like art pieces. So I tried delegating out. I tried asking my assistants to throw my pots for me, but they didn't feel the same. They didn't look quite the same. I tried asking them to colour them in once I'd done the line drawings, and again, you know, it was a different product. But it was really stressful having to work these very long days and not, you know, not being able to meet the demands. So I realised I needed to expand and find a way to, I don't know, grow. And I talked to a lot of people and tried to find what would be the best route for me. Yeah, let me just, I've lost my trail, where am I? It was around this time as well that I became a mother, and that really forced me to make some changes, because there was absolutely no way I could carry on with this business model of just working myself into the ground. I met some really, really interesting people on my journey, trying to expand this range. So my first fear was that I wanted to keep my clay. I didn't want it to become a range which was too commercial. And I was desperate to keep this unique style of illustration as unique as possible. So I was very adverse to the idea of turning over to ceramic decals. I was very resistant in the beginning. I met a technician at Staff's University, and he gave me my first stepping stone into delegating out my process. So together we worked on how we could continue to have this lovely line drawing, but still have the painterly finish. So if you go to the next slide, please, Rhiannon. Here we are. We started off with this process of screen printing my line drawing as a decal, and then I would hand paint on top on each individual pot using on glaze paints, and fire them on. You can go down to the next slide. This was a project for the National Gallery. They had a Canaletto exhibition, and they asked me to do a larger scale project than I would have been used to. So I had a go at doing it with this method. This is the line drawings for some beakers. You go down to the next slide, please. This was for a cylinder, so it was a wrap around a whole cylinder. It did speed up the process a little bit. However, I was still hand painting every single piece. Here we go. Here are some examples of the pots with this hand painted and line drawing decal. So it was one step forward, but not quite enough. I carried on with this route for perhaps 2 or 3 years, and then realized this is crazy. I'm still spending a very long time coloring and painting each of these pieces. The on glaze colors that I used, I'll show you very quickly. Were like thick pastes. and they had to be thinned down with thinners a bit like Terps or something. I think it's a printing thinner. But it took ages to blend them down and then turn them into colours to go onto the actual pots. On top of that, the process involved more firings. So I would glaze fire the pot, fire on the line drawing, and then paint on the colour, and then fire on that colour. So I had to look again. Can you move down a slide, please? This is more of the range of me hand painting onto each one. Yep. So this was my next step. I went back to my wonderful helper at Staffs University, and he said, you're going to have to move on to decals with colour too. And at that point I met Jason and Andy, who run Duchess China and also Heraldic Pottery, the printing workshop for ceramic decals, litho printed ceramic decals. They were really, really helpful in this process, and we talked a long time about my unique style of doing a black line drawing and how we could keep that and do washes of colour, and how we could transfer that and keep the kind of painterly finish that I was keen to achieve. So we started with these sheets. These are cutouts which is put onto lots of different styles of pots. This was a Chelsea Mews bowl which wraps around the bowl. These are the egg cups for the chickens, and this was a market scene for a vase. This was my first real experiment using decals in a serious way, and actually the result was brilliant. Expensive but brilliant. So we went about making up 4 or 5 different sheets, and they were screen printed using spot color prints. Here we are. You can see another sheet we made up. And many of these designs I'm still using today, actually. So I had moved on and expanded into full-on decals, which was great, but I still couldn't let go of porcelain. Anna insisted that I wanted my pots to be made in porcelain like the rest of my ceramic range, my studio pottery. And I was determined to keep them UK made. But everywhere anyone I spoke to, any factory in Stoke-on-Trent, they said, oh no, we wouldn't do it in porcelain because, you know, you wouldn't mix the clays. We only work in bone china. Eventually I met Kevin Millward, who is a very much can-do man, and he has a studio workshop alongside the many other things. I think he's head of Clay College in Stoke now. Anyway, he was brilliant. He said, don't worry, I can do it. Bring me the molds and I will make them in porcelain for you, send them to you as bisqueware, and you can decorate them. So the range continued and it was in porcelain. It was exactly what I wanted. I was really pleased. And he was able to send me, you know, truckloads of porcelain bisqueware, and I would glaze them at my studio and hand decorate with all the decals. Can we go down an image, please? Yeah, here we have one of the bowls which are in porcelain. This all went well until that crunch day when I got the huge order from the US, and I hadn't quite anticipated at the time just how big a leap it was going to be. So I talked to Kevin. He said, no problem, I'll send you all the pots. And little by little they dripped in through the door, and we would then glaze them. but there was no way me and one other assistant in my small studio, as you can see, could keep up and make all this work we'd been asked to do for America. Fortunately, it funded moving into enough into production and needing enough to be able to go to Duchess and say, look, I've got big enough orders now, please can we take this on? So I broke my back doing this American order, and we were late, very unprofessional. Everything was delivered late, and it was, you know, a bit of a shambles, but it was the turning point to saying, right, we can now upscale and develop this to factory scale production. So next one. Here we are. Again, this is another example of needing to upscale. This is working with a wonderful place called the Chelsea Physic Garden in London, where they have an amazing medicinal supply of plants, and they were very interested in my illustration. And again, it was again another step to say that I really needed to be able to produce on demand and quickly. And that was when the guys at Duchess were able to, you know, meet the demand that I needed. So for them, I was making a lot of functional wear things. These are tiles, coasters, a mug, and egg cups. I've done a whole collection of things for them. If we go down to the next slide. This is a mug for them, their glass houses there. And then the next slide. And this is the collection once it had been produced by the guys at Duchess China. And going down. Aha. So a little sidetrack, but also talking about collaborating with other people. I had a really lucky opportunity to work with Joe Malone, London, and they came to me, again, like Chelsea Physic Garden, interested in my illustration and wanting to expand it to a three-dimensional design. Fortunately for me, in this case, they were able to take on the product design and manage the kind of production side of it. So for me, it was only a matter of illustrating in a three-dimensional sense, which was something I was very used to doing. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see it was a series of hand creams, which were had to be illustrated and show that they were London. So each individual hand cream came together to make a cityscape scene. But when you took each hand cream on its own, it had to, you know, say London in itself. And this is the launch of the Bone China collection. So 2 years ago, I did a pop-up in Marylebone. I hired this space and launched the Bone China. And I think I had the shop for a couple of weeks, and it was the starting point of really developing that side of my work and that side of the branding of my work. That's the shop. And the idea behind this collection is that I can build on it over time. So these are new pieces which have been added since that launch. And every year I will introduce new designs to that collection, which at Heraldic they turn into screen prints. And at Duchess, they produce the plainware ceramics for me. These are all new designs from the last year. And without that range, I genuinely don't think I would have been able to take on a project like this one, because this took 7 or 8 months out of my working schedule, really, and it was a huge focus. This is my work for the BCB. Everything is handmade, everything is hand built or cut or thrown, hand painted, and it was an enormous undertaking, a huge project. And there's no way I could have ever imagined taking that much time out to focus on something without, you know, any other income coming in. And so the daily wear collection has really given me that freedom to be able to focus on the more personal and, you know, emotional side of my work. And it's, you know, it's a real, they balance each other out, actually. It's really nice to have the business side and keep the production going and know that people are able to buy affordable, you know, sustainable bone china, functional pieces. And yet I have this freedom to be able to make pieces which aren't about selling, and they're much more about an exploration through drawing on clay. And that brings it to the end.
Oh, wow. Oh, Helen, I have a whole raft of questions that I'd love to ask, but I'll save them to the end. Helen, thank you so much for sharing your journey. Yeah, and just, I guess the to-ing and the fro-ing and the real learning experience that it was, and how you really just tried to find the best way forward. So, and I'll ask one question, because we've got 5 minutes until 7:30. You said in the very beginning, you spoke about delegating, like the packaging, and you talked about how you tried to delegate to the assistants that you worked with and such. Did you? I take it you did absolutely everything before, or tried
Yes,
to?
absolutely, yeah.
Oh my days! Oh my days! I'm sure that's something that so many people here will be able to empathise with. The trying to. And I guess, is it something that you feel like you had to have gone through to have gotten to the next stage?
I think I was quite stubborn. I think if I'd from the beginning said, okay, I'm going to take this range, I'm going to make my life easier, and I'm going to, you know, separate my work into 2 separate ranges, it might have been a little bit simpler. I don't know how I could have done it crowdfunded or something, but I was quite stubborn and quite keen to make my manufactured ceramics as close to my studio pottery as possible. And, you know, so I think that made the process a bit more long-winded. And, you know, every piece of my daily wear collection is from my hand thrown pots, and, you know, so it's everything. I just wanted to kind of mock what I was doing in my studio. It was like I couldn't really let go, and there were all sorts of opportunities I had along the way where I could license my illustrations out to different ceramic manufacturers. You know, I could have done that, but for me it was all too close to me, and I wanted to, you know, micromanage everything.
Oh, wow, that's just incredible, Helen. Thank you so much. We've also got some questions in the comments or in the chat bit, but I'll circle back on them in the very end. But Helen, thank you so much for sharing with us. That was really wonderful. Oh. Right, bear with me. So next, I'm going to spotlight Matt Smith. Hello.
Hello. How are you?
Oh, I'm well. How are you?
Yeah, all right. I'm impressed everybody's still awake and still here. I'm feeling a bit intimidated following Helen. It's like, oh my God, you've got things like business plans and stuff, and
It's incredible. It's just incredible. It's really
isn't it?
inspirational, isn't it?
Yeah.
But Matt, I'll do a little bit of an introduction to you, though I'm sure we know about you. But yeah, I just wanted to just give a little bit of an overview of you. So Matt Smith's practice slips between craft and fine art. He often works in response to museum collections, with solo shows at the Fitzwilliam Museum and the Pitt Rivers, now on. In 2018, he was awarded Object of the Show, a collect, and in 2020, the Brookfield Prize by the Crafts Council. He is a professor of ceramics at Konstfack University in Stockholm. And I've had a really lovely chance to work with Matt whenever he was an exhibitor in a ward in our headline show in 2017. Oh, well, I'm really like showing where I've like picked everybody from tonight. You're all in awards. Sorry, everybody, but just a talented bunch. How could I not? And I'm been really delighted that you said yes to come in and having a chat with me about the different professional relationships that you make whenever you're trying to make a career in ceramics. So thank you for being here tonight, Matt.
Honestly, it's a real pleasure. Thanks for asking me along.
Oh, so the kind of the overarching point of the conversation that you and I talked about was like how somebody earlier in their career, like how can they connect with curators, gallerists, like the different relationships, also other artists, and the different relationships that are important in progressing in practice. And you shared some really interesting perspectives from your experience in practice and how it's been for you. Could you give us an overview?
Yeah,
dip into that for me.
Yeah, I think I found it really tough. Starting off, I found it really tough, and my my kind of business plan for the first year or two was just say yes to everything. And even if there was nothing there, just say yes to random people and try and make stuff happen. And it kind of worked. And to be honest, financially, it didn't work for quite a long while. And I think maybe there were kind of two turning points about 4 years in. One was I'd applied for a really, really tiny little commission for a project in Birmingham. And the arts organisation said, well, you know, who do you want to work with? And I said, I'd like to work with the museum. And that just kind of snowballed. They initiated a meeting with Andy Horn, the curator at Birmingham Museum, and we got on. And I think almost my career's just been, if the door's slightly ajar, just push it really far and just kind of run as far as you can. And what started out as I think it's a £200 commission, ended up becoming a solo show at Birmingham Museum throughout the museum. And it's great when you don't know what you're doing. You'll just agree to things and run at it and
just give it your best. You just give it your best.
I think that's it. I think the opportunities tend to come quite few and far between at the start. So when you get one, just shake it as much as you can and make the absolute most of it. And yeah.
And so that, as the beginning, sort of, that was one of the relationships that you worked with, the curator that you worked with. And so did it quite naturally lead on to the next opportunity, or did you go out and seek out the next opportunities?
It was there were kind of a few things ran in parallel. That one led on to another show in Leeds, but at the same time, I was noticing the National Trust were programming a lot of contemporary art, but they tended to program the similar artists again and again and again. It was just like, how do you break into this? And with two friends, Polly Hartnett and Caitlin Heffernan, we decided to send, this sounds really grown up, we decided to set up a charity and start our own commissioning agency, which sounds really grown up, but we were all working from our spare bedrooms and just kind of, it was all, you know, bits of string and tin cans, but we made it kind of work, and we got we managed to get some Arts Council funding for a relatively modest project in a historic house in Brighton, and then that worked well. We got a small publication out of it, and then we went to the National Trust and went into a 3-year project with them. So a bit, I'm just going to say I'm a bit like Helen because I'm so impressed by your business, Helen. I'm not, but it was just that, you know, something led on to something a bit bigger, and that's kind of generally how things have kind of worked. So there's been a bit of curating of other people's work, a bit of working with curators in museums, and then a bit of making new work to show with galleries in places like Collect and you know, trade fairs.
Just to touch on the friends that you worked with in setting up that charity organisation, were they also artists?
Caitlin Heffernan's an artist, and Polly Hartnett trained as a textile artist but works as a curator now.
Oh wow.
So,
and it was just a complete DIY. You did it yourself. You brought it together. You set up this charity organisation and applied for funding.
Yeah, and it's actually, I think that would be my big takeaway, that I wish somebody had told me that the Arts Council gives money to craft makers. You know, that it's not just artists, and they're great, especially if you're not based in London. They really love regional projects, and their job's to give money to artists. And I think as artists, it's our duty to take money off the Arts Council to do great work. So it's kind of, the fountain is a bit of a it's a bit of a mind melt, but the second one gets quicker, and it, you know, it's kind of, there's no reason not to do it. It's how the government wants to spend its money, and you know, as artists, it allows us to do things we couldn't do otherwise.
Mm-hmm. And then, so after that, then.
But, sorry.
I was just saying, after that then, you mentioned about then working with galleries and exhibiting at Collect. How did that come about for you? Being represented by a gallery?
Sorry, can you say that again, Rhiannon? I think somebody... Yeah, of course. I applied for, it was an open call for a show called Young Masters with a gallery called Cynthia Corbett. And it was kind of for artists that were working in relation to historic art in some way. And I applied for that and got selected. And then it's been an ongoing relationship with the gallery ever since. So it was, yeah, I didn't know it was going to end up in a long-term relationship with the gallery, but it has. Are you finding, is my Wi-Fi a bit
It's my
slow?
Wi-Fi. It is mine. I'm so sorry. I've just.
Is it yours or is it? I've got to fit. I'm in a really rural location, and if somebody watches the video down the road, things go a bit haywire.
No, I'm so sorry. I've just moved rooms. And so Young Masters, that is a really incredible opportunity, and it's out there and available to so many, and provided you the opportunity to work with Preston Fitzgerald, and then, as you say, move on and work with Cynthia Corbett. And so was it directly after that that you exhibited at Collect?
Yeah, I was really lucky. Cynthia took me to Collect, and she's been taking me along there ever since. And financially, it's the big time in the diary every year. Collect financially has been really helpful, and I think actually what we were talking about was, I feel a huge sense of responsibility that I'm conscious when galleries take you to somewhere like Collect, they're investing huge amounts of money into the stand and into their time, and kind of each time I go, I give something new or different, just to kind of feel like I'm doing a bit of work back, hopefully trying to help her make the risk that going to somewhere like Collect is, trying to make it pay off a little bit.
And I guess that's really lovely. Like, you're acknowledging that, like, Cynthia, like she is running a gallery and you're providing opportunity for her to draw in her clients and connect them with your work. And you do that a lot actually through the display. A lot of the curation and display of your work is so well considered in how it communicates with different audiences, whether it's buyers, collectors, or just a general audience.
Yeah, I think I'm not that comfy in just making standalone objects that stand on a plinth or a shelf. I wish I was. It would make my life a lot easier. But I'm really interested in how objects kind of work together, or how they relate to a space or a room, or the situation they're in. So I guess there's kind of quite a lot of storytelling and relationships going on between objects and the space. So yeah, I really wish I could just make nice things that stood happily on a plinth, but that just doesn't seem to be quite where I'm at.
Oh, but it also gives, because I remember when we spoke before, you were talking about how that gives Cynthia or a gallerist or somebody a talking point with another person. So you're providing them content to then share with others, whether it's the concept of your work or whether it's the context by which you've displayed your work. All of that kind of feeds into that. The relationships that your gallerist will have with others and how they connect with others.
And I think this is kind of, yeah, I think, collectors often want to chat, or they kind of, I think we all kind of want to chat, but to be able to have a narrative around the work, a story in there has been really useful to start chats with people. But also to, quite often I'll work with a museum or a National Trust house, and then the work leaves that space and goes into a commercial gallery space, but the links aren't lost. So it's how do you bring the stories that develop the exhibition, how do you bring them into a white cube space and make them readable to people who aren't, if you go into a museum in a particular frame of mind, if you go into a white cube gallery, you're in a very different way of thinking. So how can you transfer it from one of those situations to another?
Oh, absolutely. And that's still relationships, isn't it? That's still connecting with people, but through your work.
And I think that kind of bit of relationships was something I just didn't twig when I left college. I think I just expected a gallery would come along and take my work and make everything wonderful and sort it all out for me. And I could just sit in my studio quite happily as the introvert that I am and just send stuff off. And I kind of realized that actually, for the business to work, the gallery needs to make money and I need to help them make money. And if they're not making money, they've not got the money to do another show. And it's very much linked. The relationship is very symbiotic. And I think I'm incredibly nosy about numbers and business. And I'm really interested in how much does it cost to show at Collect? How do the numbers work? You've got this, how does this all tie together? And as soon as you realize what the numbers are doing, you're like, wow, we've really got to support the galleries as well as asking the galleries to support us. That, yeah, it's the numbers are quite tight, I think, for a lot of galleries.
Yeah. Oh, it's just a really, that's just really compassionate and being able to reflect and understand their perspective. Because, I guess the way I think about it, as an artist, you would love representation from a gallery, but to have that understanding of the hoops and the things that they need to go through, they're human as well.
Yeah, completely. And also, there are some avenues for funding that are open to me that wouldn't be open to a gallery. And if we're taking work to the States, if I can get a bit of money to help pay for the costs, why wouldn't I do that? Why wouldn't I support the gallery when the gallery is investing so much in me? So it's kind of, I think I've moved a long way from, I think when I started was a very selfish idea that the gallery just sorts everything out, to much more, actually this is a relationship, and like all relationships, you kind of need to listen to what's going on for the other person, and there's give and take at different times.
Oh, that's a really wonderful thing to have learned. Do you think that's one of the biggest things that you've learned through the relationships that you've had with different curators and gallerists along the way?
I think that maybe the biggest thing is, because when I do museum projects, you'll end up working with people for 2 or maybe 3 years. And this is no surprise to any of us, but it's kind of worth saying that everyone's different. And every time you get into one of those relationships, it's like starting over. You don't know what ticks people have, how organizations work. It's and I think just having that tolerance, that I think going in as an artist to a museum or a gallery, I'm a very small part of what they do. And well, you know, I'd love to go in like the Donna Summer of craft with a big diva mantle. You know, they've got hundreds of other things going on, and it's just, I think being patient when they haven't got time to get back to you quickly enough, and making life as easy as possible for them. You know, all the basics that Helen was talking about of turning up on time, being professional, you know, all the things that make somebody else's life easy. You know, it's a small world, people talk, it's do your best.
Yeah, absolutely. And whenever you're working with gallerists, also, like, because everybody's different, it's not always going to work out, just like friendships or relationships that you might have, it doesn't always work out, and that's okay. Because sometimes, because it's very much person to person, like you have to have a certain amount of connection between you to be able to work together, I imagine.
Yeah, and also I think just realizing that I get on really well with Cynthia. You know, we travel to show, you know, we get on fine, but fundamentally it's a business relationship. And that's what pulls us together. I've worked with other gallerists that I've known as friends, and then they've become, and I've had a lovely time with them, but I mean, economically it's been disastrous. So it's kind of working out what you want these friendships to be about. Is it that you want to hang out with people and have a nice time, or is it an economic, you want the sale, you want the business to work. It's horses for courses. And then there's gallerists that I thought, oh my God, this is going to be amazing. And then they kind of commission a whole show and then gaslight you, or other ones that never end up paying. It's kind of, I think when you end up with a relationship that works, where you trust them, then it's really worth keeping hold of.
And I guess by being organized and by being easy and authentic to work with, they can trust you in return.
Yeah, and I think it's also, you very kindly mentioned the object of the show at Collect, and things like that, which are always a great surprise and always have huge imposter syndrome that there's been a clerical error. So whoever was meant to get that prize, I'm really sorry I stole it from you. I didn't mean to. But they all help the gallery. You know, the gallery has something to put on its stand that endorses it as well as the artist. And it's kind of thinking what, you know, a lot of the museum shows lend authority to my practice, which helps give the gallery credibility, that helps collectors have confidence in the work and the gallery. So it's this kind of, how do you create some sort of positive cycle that helps both you as an artist, but also the gallery? Because the more you can help them, the more they're going to be able to help you, I think.
Absolutely. So do you have any like advice for like how somebody early in their career or is coming up in their practice, how do you get connected with galleries and curators? I know the £1 million question, right? So hard. Like people do it by like Instagram. That's come up as a big thing.
Yeah. I think, yeah, because, you know, when I graduated, I had exactly the same question, how do you make this happen? It was like, oh yeah, you really can't go into a gallery and just ask them to represent you. And I was like, you've got to be wrong. I'm really proactive. I'm going to go and do this and make it happen. And guess what? The people who were giving me advice really knew what they were talking about. And it never kind of worked. think the two things that have really worked for me, sometimes artists have introduced me to galleries. So either artists who are doing group shows have said to a gallery, I think you should include Matt, and then that's led on to a long-term relationship. But the other thing has been open calls, applying for things. And I think kind of a few years into your practice, you give talks and you talk about the things that have gone well. And I feel one day I need to give the really long talk, which is going to be all the rejection letters I've had. And which we don't really talk about, but I think anybody who's had a practice in the arts has a huge rejection file somewhere, whether they've skipped it or not. And I think needing to have a tough skin, or as I was saying to Rhiannon when we were talking, a really, really terrible memory, which is my blessing, that I just forget things. So I'll often apply for stuff, and if they come off, it's like a huge surprise that I even applied for it. And if it doesn't come off, geez, I've forgotten about it already, so it doesn't really matter. But applying for things is really, I found, has sometimes it's led to things happening, but other times it's just led to people knowing about you. And I think quite often with curators or people selecting shows, they kind of want to see your work 2 or 3 times before they're going to take the risk on it. It's sadly for us, there's huge numbers of graduates coming on to the art world or the craft world every year. And I think people want to know that people are going to be committed and they're going to be there in a couple of years' time. And I think which makes it really tough and frustrating at the start, but I can see why curators would maybe want to leave it a year or 2 to see if you're really committed to keeping stuff going.
I've also heard that from a number of other people as well. And yeah, absolutely. And I guess it also goes to show that you have, like, it is really tough, but you have to be in it for the long game. And like those relationships that you might start out, whether it's that artist that you met this one time, or whether it's somebody that you had a conversation with, nothing's going to happen tomorrow or next month or perhaps even this year, but it's something that might happen further on down the line whenever you reconnect with them in an exhibition that you're in together or whatever.
And I think remembering that people are human, that you might meet a curator and maybe I'm oversharing here, but I've met curators, I've been terrified of them or thought, oh my God, they're at such a level I could never talk to them. And just remembering that people are people and actually, just be nice to people. It's really quite simple. Don't be shy, say hello to people, it's all okay. And I see there are some people like Joe Taylor, who's just so appropriately confident that you see everybody bursting into smiles as soon as she walks into a room. And it's just to have that kind of warmth, I think takes people a long way.
Oh, that's lovely. And we've got some questions actually that I could weave in here. And we've got a really lovely, so I'll ask Sam Lucas to share some questions. I'll ask her second one first. How many years had you been working creatively after you graduated before you applied for the Young Masters?
How long have I been working? God, this should come off the top of my head. I think, God, was it probably about 7 or 8 years, something like that?
Right.
So it had been a while, oh God, isn't it terrible? You apply for stuff, and I was like, oh, I think I've got a chance of getting in here. And then when they did select the work to go in, I was like, oh, it's amazing. And then when I was awarded the prize, it was just like, well, this is just ridiculous. But thanks very much. So I think that's actually, there was somebody else who was in the awards that year, and I was chatting to him when they announced it. I said, oh God, I feel really bad. And he just went, oh, shut up, that's how we roll, it's all. And I think, those moments of generosity you get from people where they just go, it's a competition, there were 30 of us, only one of us is going to get it, off you go and enjoy it. And I would love to have that generosity the other way around. It was a really lovely thing for someone to say.
Oh, that's gorgeous. I've got another question from Sam. She asks, how do you balance your academic life with your creative practice?
Yeah. Badly, I think would be the answer. I always feel I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time, but I do my best. I'm lucky that the academic job is in Sweden, so I commute over there once every 6 weeks for a period of time and then come back again, which provides some distance. But yeah, I think I'm just so into everything. It's my biggest problem, that I realize that whatever I'm doing, I want to be doing something else at the same time. So I can't blame academia on my practice. I'm just really bad at deciding what to do and sticking to it. So yeah.
Oh, thanks. I'm also curious, in your practice, Matt, because you work with ceramics, and you have done in your practice, and then more recently we've seen you started to move into working with textiles, and I find that like the connection and the line that connects your practice between ceramics and textiles is so fluid, it's so connected. But I'm really curious about how that transition felt. Like, were you worried about how perhaps Cynthia Corbet Gallery might have reacted to like a complete change in material?
Yeah, was I worried about how she'd react? It was the work I wanted to make. So more than, is this going to make Cynthia happy? It was like, actually, this is the work this is what I need to do at the moment. And also very selfishly, textiles, it's a lot cleaner, so you can do it watching TV in the warm, and clay, as I think we all know, can be a bit cold and wet at times. So that was some of the thinking behind it. But I'd say it took Cynthia about 5 or 6 years to want to show the textiles.
Oh,
and
you've been making them for that long a time.
Yeah. And I don't know what the tipping point with her was, but it was about 2 years ago. She said, we'll give the textiles a go. Let's give it a go. And yeah, they did really well. And fundamentally, if you're spending the money on a standard collect, you want to be showing work that's going to sell, because that's what you need to keep the numbers working. So it was kind of, they did well, and she's been happy to show them since. And I think they sit quite well together.
They do. Absolutely.
But there's been other galleries that have shown ceramics, and they just didn't want to touch the textiles at all, no matter how hard I tried to push them into them. So it's, again, I think it's accepting that curators have their own opinions and galleries have their own opinions about what they think is going to work for their audience, and what the audience might not be ready for yet.
That's a really lovely way to think about it. I had a really interesting conversation earlier on in the week. Oh, we've got a lovely comment from Emma Marks there, just saying thanks for the generous and open advice. That's lovely. But yeah, I was I had an interesting conversation with somebody earlier on in the week around the idea of it's called the scenius. So it's a term that was coined by, I need to look at my notes here, called Brian Eno. Somebody involved in the music field. I don't know this person. But anyway, talking about the people that are surrounded and connected around like a very particular person, who I guess would be called the genius, for example, but it's everybody involved in it. It's the context around it. And this is how I sort of, it made me really reflect on the things that you had been sharing when we had our conversation before. It's not just about the individual in the progression of practice. It's also about those creative conversations that you might have with curators or other artists that support the development of the individual practice, but also the field.
I completely. I think every time I've worked with a museum, I can't do these projects on my own. I just, physically, I haven't got keys. I haven't got the cases. I haven't, it's suddenly with the Fitzwilliam show, there were dozens of people involved in it. Obviously, I scratched their names out at the last minute and just left my own because my ego is so enormously huge. And I did thank them, honestly. But you realize that actually a lot of it is pulling a group along with you, that giving the museum confidence that what you want to do is relevant for their audiences, and then spending the time with the front of house staff, the technicians, getting people involved so that they want to do the work. And then certainly with the Fitzwilliam, there were technicians that were running way ahead of me and I was like, oh my God, you've done stuff I haven't even asked you to do yet. And I think it's how do you make the best out of the group of people you've got to work with, and how do you try and bring out the best of both in yourself and in them as well.
Oh, how do you?
Oh God, laughing, chatting, bribing people with coffee and cakes. I think actually spending time with people and talking to them and listening to them and laugh. I seem to spend most of my time laughing with people, which obviously is not possibly the most professional way forward, but hopefully we have fun doing it.
That has been absolutely glorious, just chat with you. We could chat forever.
Stop it.
Oh, and it's just been, just so incredible just to hear about how things have been from your perspective, and the different like nuggets and learnings that you've had through your career. I'll just have a quick flick back and see, we've got an applause emoji from Sam.
Where is Sam? Can we get Sam back?
Shall I'm gonna spotlight you all, Helen, if that's all right, and we can do a bit of a Q&A here. We've got Sam and we've also got Dena with us. So where are we? Trying to spotlight her. Let me try again. There we go. Because I've also got some questions. We actually have a really lovely question from Laura for Helen, actually. Helen, have you managed to protect your IP fully, or has anyone ever copied your work? And if so, how did you address it?
Okay.
Great one.
So there's a brilliant company called Briffa, and they are really supportive in sorting out your IP and protection and all of that. And I fully recommend them. They work with lots of design agencies, artists, craftspeople, everyone. They're the people to go to. I'm halfway through the process of doing it, but they're lawyers, and they take it all on really and make sure that we have all the correct language everywhere. You have to be so careful now because of course everything with Instagram and your website and everything, you've got so much exposure that you actually, it's a tricky one, covering all your bases, especially on your website. You have to be so careful about all your language, but they're amazing. They were my helpers. But it's interesting because there's another thing which we discussed at the very beginning of my career, and it was I'm called Helen Beard, and we said I was working with a branding agency, and they said, so what should we call you? Are you going to be Helen Beard Ceramics, Helen Beard Daily Wear? What is it? And they said, oh, well, no one's ever going to be called Helen Beard. No one else is. And then about, I don't know, 3 years ago, I got a text message from the architects who'd worked with Edmund, and they said, oh, you're going to be at White Cube tonight for Helen's exhibition. And I was like, what? Who is this? And there's now this phenomenally successful Helen Beard fine artist who does extremely different work to what I do. You have to look it up. But it's one of those really kind of unfortunate things. You can't really protect your name and say you can't use your name. We've both got the same name, and we just live with it. But It's slightly different to IP protection, but it's just a really like interesting thing, because we did talk about patenting the name and, you know, all that, but you can't stop anyone else using their name Helen Beard either.
That's hilarious.
I've not had any problems. Sorry, what was the other part of her question? I've not had any problems yet with copying. It's a really difficult one. I've always kind of hoped that my illustration style has been unique enough to me for you to be able to recognize my style. So you know, lots of people can do the same subject, and they do. You know, there's hundreds of bird beakers, even swimmer beakers out there now, much more than there ever used to be. But it's a very different style of illustration between different people. So you know, it doesn't upset me when I see other people doing the same subjects as me, because, you know, you can't stop people drawing what they see. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Helen. Sam, I had a question for you, because you mentioned in the chat about the way of working that you shared with Dena through the film and discussion had come from the embodied clay workshop, which you took with Helen, Felsie, Priska Fallon, and Dena was also involved in that. I'm curious to see, like, has going out to workshops or particular things, has that always been important in pushing your practice forward?
Yeah, I think so, definitely. Yeah. I think as when just starting out making, I think it was hugely important in sort of building up my confidence, really, with material and being around different makers in different environments and different processes, looking at, definitely. I think doing summer schools, and I didn't really do that many workshops actually, but I think doing summer schools was very good. Did one with Neil Brownsword as well at BCB. I think I might be a little bit obsessed with BCB. Anyway, shh, don't tell them.
For us.
No, I think it's just there's a diversity, and I think it's really important to try different things with different makers. Absolutely. You know, if your heart's in it and you really want to do it, I think, yeah, go for it. And also they're really reasonable. That was the other thing. You know, a lot of times in ceramics, because people are all trying to make a living, aren't they? So, you know, and I know that a lot of artists are sharing time and sharing their facilities. Like you said, Helen, to do something like that, you would have to take time out of your own, your career. So, but with BCB, I think it was different. I think there's a whole picture as well. It was being in that phenomenal building as well. You know, there's such heritage there, which I think whenever you hear anybody that has any connection with it, I think there's just something about it. I see that in your work as well, Matt. You know, your amazing cast objects. I just see, there's so much history and so much heritage in it.
I've got to say, can I just big up the BCB as well? It's God, there aren't those organizations where you end up working with them, it feels like you've had a really lovely hug. It's just, honestly, you guys, if anybody listening gets the chance to work with the BCB, just run at it. They're one of the good ones.
Yeah,
that's so kind. I'm glad I've got this recorded, by the way.
Straight
into your
into
next
that
promo
house.
campaign, Matt. Your face will be all over it. Dena, I'd love to hear from you in regards to, because like how you have gone from working directly with communities whenever you were working at BCB through your work at MMU, and now into research and really expanding and researching into clay as this incredible material, as a transformational material. How has that transition for you gone from people to research? Is it still involving people, like, more directly?
No, not as much as I want it to. I think it's very strange, isn't it? Like, I agree with you, Matt, that BCB is amazing, and I worked there for 6 years, and it was a great place to kind of like grow as a like an individual and a practitioner, but I am like I'm an anomaly. So like I design things with people for people, and I think clay's great, and I think it's transformational in a community setting or in a health setting, and that was kind of massively born at the biennial as the health manager. And I think, yeah, I've been really lucky to move into lecturing and then a PhD and then some academic kind of research projects, and I feel like I'm really forging, I'm forging something in that world. But I don't know whether you could have everything all the time. I don't get to work with people that much anymore. I don't get to sit around a table with people from a community and design a workshop. But funnily, I'm doing a PhD about that. It's very kind of, and I will get to, but it'll be a very small part of my PhD because it's one composite part, but that's kind of what it's about. And that's why I chose to do it, because I thought that there wasn't enough evidence-based research out there. There wasn't a good way to measure impact of, especially like the biennial style of pedagogy. There was, you could write reports, you could report to the Arts Council, and you could write nice stories, but really it's really doing amazing work. And all of the biennial programme strands are doing amazing work. So yeah, it's funny old transition, I have to say. And I'm not completely sure that it is a linear transition. I'm not sure that I'm moving into academia. I think I'd love to do it again quite soon. I'd quite like to sit around a table with lumps of clay, with an artist, with a group of people, whoever that is, that have, as much or if not more than me and the ceramicist to say and to bring to the table and knowledge to give. And that's kind of, that's what I do. It's funny. It's a kind of, I think I'm in a bit of a funny place, but I'm enjoying it and I feel very lucky.
I wonder, like, is the distance from directly working with people and working within the more research side of things, is that distance to see it from a different perspective, is that helpful?
Yeah, I also think it gives you space and time. So when you're running like 6 programs on the ground and you're like writing risk assessments and you're having meetings and you're writing reports to the Arts Council and you're kind of doing research whenever you can, you don't get enough time to get your head in a book to really understand. You don't get time to really the reason I spent that time with Sam is because she's amazing, but also I really need that long time to talk to makers and draw out what it is about making and what it is about the material that's so impactful in a community or health setting. And I didn't get to do that as someone that was working for a busy festival. I don't think anybody does. If they do, I'd love to know where they've got their job, because you just don't get that time and that space and that. It's also a great place to sit and a lucky place to sit. But it's not a kind of, it's a tricky one, but I feel very lucky, and I feel very lucky to still be working with the biennial. I definitely agree with you, Matt. Like, we were in a talk the other night and we were talking about ceramic studios, kind of money making and places to kind of go and make ceramics if you can pay for it, and the ownership on them to have some community-based and free-based work, which definitely is, especially with some of the locations that they're in. And I just kind of pulled the biennial studio out of the hat as an example, and that's kind of absolutely born by Joe, who's was the studio manager. And it's this amazing ecology that completely serves every single type of person that lives in the city. It pulls all their health and community programs, but it also functions as this kind of paid for studio. The biennial programs I think are really great, and maybe don't get enough enough kind of recognition, I think.
Oh, that's lovely. Helen, you're a businesswoman. Where did you learn all of those business skills?
It didn't.
You sound like you know what you're doing, though.
No. I deny it.
You're blacking really well, Helen.
We all are.
No, I did when I was at Edmonds, I did actually stay on working for him afterwards as his studio kind of, admin person. So And I worked for Julian's there as well, doing all of his admin. And it was really interesting working with quite established artists and learning how they ran their business. And, you know, you saw every side of it. You saw the numbers as well as the way they were so brilliant with their clients. And, you know, like Matt said, it's kind of they became their friends, and you know, so you learn all these kind of different things involved in being a ceramic artist or a studio potter, you know, you just through being around them and seeing how they did it. But of course, this side of my business, the production, is nothing like anything that any of those artists would be working in. Them much more doing that, you know, the one-off pieces, and it's fabulous. But yeah, I don't know, I also had a really fantastic mentor. She set up an agency called Future Icons. She's Louise, I've forgotten her surname all of a sudden. Anyway, she used to be chief exec at the Craft Central, where I had a studio for a while in Clerkenwell. And she, again, is incredibly business minded and would, you know, take me aside and say, hang on a minute, Helen, have you protected this? What are you going to do about this? And, you know, all these things which I had not thought of. Oh, you're launching, so how are you going to do it? You know, all those kind of things.
Oh, that is so helpful. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah,
have that kind of perspective, and then also, like, through your experience, learning as you go in with certain aspects of it, and feeling it out. And whenever you explored your journey through this process of refining, to make it more manageable to produce, and then finally working with Duchess China, it felt like a thread that we were following. It was all very connected, but you were feeling it out as you went along.
Yeah, very much so. And it mostly was, you know, money driven as well. What can I afford to do, you know, as well? Because when you're starting out, it is very hand to mouth, and it's kind of, it's always going to be that way. You've got to take some jumps and, you know, resist some. Everyone's got their own kind of trial and error.
Mm-hmm. So true. Oh, thanks, Helen. Oh, well, I think, let me have a look back. Let me see if we've got any more questions that have come through. But I think that might be us winding down. Unless you each might. Do you have any questions for each other, or anything that you wanted to tease out?
I heard Freddie Robbins, the textile artist, talk about a year after I graduated, and somebody asked her, how did she become successful? And she said, oh, if you just keep going, everybody else falls away, and then you become the best person. And I just remember just thinking, oh my God, just keep going. It's that easy. And it's, you know, when you hear the right thing at the right time, and it was during quiet times or tough times, it's just been, Freddie says, just keep going.
That's brilliant.
It's true though, isn't it? Like, the right thing comes. Oh, sorry, Sam. Something comes along at a good time, doesn't it? Sometimes you'll be feeling stuck, or you'll be feeling like you want to do more of something, and someone will ask you to do something. And I blame my PhD on Helen Felsey. It's her responsibility. She made me do it. But yeah, she forced me. But yeah, I do think it's right. You kind of just keep swimming, don't you?
Yeah. How do you keep it up? How do you keep going, or how have you kept going, especially through some of the tough times? Yeah, how have each of you, what are your tactics, or what are the things that you might do to just keep going and practice?
I think you have to be sufficiently mad. Yeah, and you kind of put yourself in positions where you actually can't back out.
So there's a good There was a good Venn. I love a Venn diagram, but someone shared a Venn diagram today on Instagram that I just thought hit the nail on the head. It's a Japanese term. I don't know if it's technical, but it's like this kind of perfect state where you do something that I won't explain it very well, but like kind of makes you feel like you're contributing and being contributing to the world. You're being kind, something that kind of excites you, and something that kind of like keeps the mortgage being paid or something, and all these kind of like things in the middle is kind of the perfect job or something, or kind of pastime. I don't know, but I think it does kind of, lots of things overlap, don't they? And you've just got to kind of keep a good balance of everything to pay the bills and be happy and help other people out and be kind and things. So yeah, I thought that was good.
Sam, what about you? You talk about like making space for play and to give space to that within your practice. Is that a way of like sustaining and pushing your work forward?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I just have to do it. I just have to do it I got my hands in clay every day anyway because of work. It might not be me that's making, it might be somebody else, but my own stuff, it's just always in my head all the time. I just have to do it. Whether I can, I'm not as brave as the others. I haven't taken that leap really. I've still got my day job, which I've been there for 22, 23 years, and I find it a bit difficult to step away from it. But now I've sort of tried to get a bit of a balance by having my practice half the week and then work half the week.
It also helps that you enjoy what you do.
Yeah, I do enjoy it.
And actually, this is really connected to one of the questions from Katie. She asks, it's a question for everybody. How do you manage your time, considering you have so many different things going on, such as social media, making, working with galleries, family, other jobs, etc.?
My family's gone feral. I left them about 10 years ago. I mean, it's that the house hasn't burnt down is a minor miracle, to be honest.
Well, I'm currently on holiday in Spain because I've just landed with 2 children and all my bags are still like being unpacked. So I'm not managing my time very well because I didn't realise the crossover in the dates. I'm absolutely like like a duck, like a swan or something. Like I don't even know whether I appear very calm, but it's crazy underneath. But yeah, I think kind of what's a kind of practical bit of advice is to have that balance. I think to kind of, if you're doing a few things, like Sam's just explained, like what balance is good for you, what bits bring what bits bring in the money, what bits bring the development, what bits bring in the happiness, and trying to kind of stick to that with like whatever system you can really. But I don't know whether I'm a good example because I just kind of tap on a keyboard all day rather than people that actually work with clay, so I should let other people answer.
What about you, Helen?
I don't know, it's been very, very hard. Particularly the last couple of years, because I've got 3 kids under the age of 10, which was really, really, really a challenge with the homeschooling and lots of really late nights and a very understanding and supporting partner, because you have to just work long hours when you have to. I haven't mastered it. I'd love to know the answer. Someone else tell me.
Please. Oh, wow. That's just incredible. But really honest, nobody's like, we don't all have it figured out. We're all just trying, aren't we? I have one final question for you, Helen. And it's from Louise Francis Smith. Oh, no, it's not. That was the last one. Sorry. It's from Laura. She's asked,
about the colours.
Yes, it is. Did you have to use Pantone refs for the end colours of the transfers, or did they fire the same colour? She's had experience of colours of inks changing through firings.
No, I've not had that experience, actually. They've always been true to colour. And they use, at Heraldic, they use spot colours, and it's probably 6 or 8 colours, and they're screen printed and they're incredible. They can match the kind of wateriness of my watercolours. I've just hit gold there, really. They're really brilliant, and they really, they really work on the colours to make it match up. They're incredible. And everything, all my illustrations were scanned to a ridiculous high resolution, and then converted, and they spent a long time converting, taking out all, because I did them on white paper and they even complained about the white paper every time. It's not white enough, they take out colour from the white paper, and I feel really lucky I was able to hand that over to them. I've not had problems with colours changing.
Oh, lovely. Thank you, Helen. And thank you, all of you. What a gorgeous conversation. Thank you so much. Oh, you've all
Thanks for organising it, Rhiannon.
Yeah, thank you.
It's been so lovely. And you've all been so honest and just so generous with the experiences that you've had and the time that you've spent preparing and thinking about and being here this evening. I'm really grateful. Thank you. And thanks to everybody else who's joined us. It's really nice to have you here. It's sad that this is the final talent development program, but we'll see you out there.
Good luck with it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Rhiannon.
Oh, thank you so much. Have a lovely evening, everybody. Sleep well. Night night.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Cheerio. Bye.
Bye.